Singapore has built this amazing place out of nothing. So there is a natural hustling gene here.
Meet Magnus Grimeland, a multi-millionaire who has lived in Singapore for 10 years. A former classmate of Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin, he is a co-founder of Asia's biggest fashion marketplace Zalora and now runs the business accelerator Antler. Magnus explained why Singapore is an ideal place for building startups, whether Singaporeans are hustlers enough to start businesses, and why he still chooses to rent despite being very well off. I'm Max, an entrepreneur and YouTuber living in Singapore. Let's go.
For you personally, what's the biggest difference of life in Norway and Singapore?
Biggest difference is, I think, what you do outside of work, right? You know, in Norway, you'd go hiking in the woods and you'd go skiing and you do different things at different times of the year. Yeah. Here in Singapore, a lot of what you do outside of work is obviously summer-related sports, and I quite enjoy that. You know, in the weekends, you can always put on a pair of shorts, and sometimes you don't even have to put on shoes during the weekend, which is super nice.
Do you miss winter at all?
I do. I quite enjoy skiing, and I enjoy getting cold. But I do go back to Norway, do some skiing on vacation. We've been going to hand skiing, and then a bunch of us started this ice bathing culture here in Singapore, so we get a little bit of that coldness a few times a week.
What's the role of Singapore, I think, in a global tech ecosystem in general? Because what I've heard, I'm not in this business, but what I've heard, like still most of the biggest companies, they're still in the Valley in the US. So the US is still like the biggest supplier of like successful companies such as the startups, and the most money is there. So what's the role of Singapore in this?
For sure. Silicon Valley is the largest ecosystem in the world. Second largest ecosystem in the world, I think, is in New York. So the two largest ecosystems in the world are in the US for building tech companies. And it's a large base, and it will probably continue to be the biggest for a while. What's happening, however, is innovation is becoming more distributed. So innovation within the rest of the world is growing much faster than in the US, but from a smaller base. So if you look at stats, a decade back in time, there was 30 countries in the world, 30 cities in the world. It created a unicorn. Fast forward to today, there's 170 cities in the world that's created a unicorn. If you go to Singapore specifically, when we were starting Zalora, $250 million a year was deployed into venture in the region, where a majority of that was deployed in Singapore. Fast forward to 2021, 33 billion, right? So you've seen more than a 10x growth in 10 years. Singapore is an amazing place to do business. It's a great place to attract talent and capital, strong regulatory environment. And you're surrounded with a region of 600 million people that is growing faster, more stably than anywhere in the rest of the world. You're pretty close to China and India. When you go from 600 million to 3 billion plus people, we're just getting started on that wave. For the first time ever, actually, last year, more capital went into innovation and startups outside of the US than in the US. I'm not at all saying that the US is not probably still the best place to build a business, but great founders today tend to want to build businesses where they're located and where they see big opportunities.
Allow me to introduce you to a game changer that will simplify running your business, Odoo. With Odoo, creating your dream online business has never been easier. Let's take a look at how you can effortlessly set up your very own online shop. First, let's talk about coding. With Odoo, you can forget about it. It offers ready-to-use functions right in the database. You can have your account up and running in no time. And the best part, enjoy a 15-day free trial without needing to provide your credit card details. It's a risk-free, and you can see the magic of Odoo for yourself. But here's the real game changer. Odoo's interface is incredibly user-friendly. You don't need an IT background to make the most of Odoo's full-featured capabilities. It isn't just about online stores. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software. You can seamlessly add CRM and social media marketing tools to take your business to new heights. Or you can incorporate more than 60 plus other tools specifically tailored to your needs. Ready to simplify your business? Sign up for Odoo's 15-day free trial today. Just visit the link in description below and experience the future of business management. Don't wait, it's time to elevate your business with Odoo.
I found something interesting from one of the interviews. Usually you're saying like growing up in the countryside in Norway, we were constantly reminded about the law of Jante, according to which individual ambition and non-conformism are inappropriate. It's interesting because I find that how the society structure in Asia, and particularly in Singapore, is maybe less individualistic, more like, you know, like based on a group and like group interests.
Yes, so in the Nordics, you have this thing called the Antler, which basically says that you shouldn't think you're better than anyone else. You shouldn't create too much of annoyance over yourself. It's basically the opposite of being a hustler, which when you're building a company or you're a founder, you very often need to build as a skill set. And there's some similarity there to some Asian cultures, right? Which I think in general is good for a society, right? That people think about society as a whole and not only about themselves as individuals. Now, what is important is when you build businesses, which I've done, we're now supporting a bunch of founders all across the globe, building new businesses. You need to get a little bit rid of that mindset, which is you need to leave your pride behind a little bit and not be afraid of approaching people about becoming your first hire, about becoming your first investor, about being your first customer. So I think building that hustling skill set is very important for founders who don't really have it. In any culture, some people are naturally born like that, right? They may go into an elevator and they become friends with everyone before the elevator hits the bottom floor. But for many people, particularly based on kind of where you've grown up and the culture you grew up in, you need to build that hustling gene as a founder. Singapore has built this amazing place out of nothing. So there is a natural hustling gene here. You built this amazing place on people, right? No natural resources, with all the largest GDP per capita right now, probably the safest country in the world, tremendous amount of equality, tremendous diversity in the population. And that obviously has required quite a bit of hustling, right? When you're going from almost nothing to this incredible country that we live in now. And if you look at the business people in Singapore and the government there, they're mega hustlers, right? They're traveling around the entire world, learning from the best, bringing it back home.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's everything else you have on top of it, right? Which is building trust, having strong values, working hard, right? You know, Singapore is, if you compare Singapore to a lot of other places across the world, people are generally working harder. And then this kind of feeling, which you also have in India, and you do have a lot in the Southeast Asian countries, actually in Asia in general, there's this feeling of wanting to make things better, right? Not being content, taking one step up through your lifetime, accomplishing something.
It's an interesting observation that you said, like the government, like being hustlers. That's true. They are super quick to adopt new things and learn to just integrate them. Like, hey, did it work somewhere else? Let's take it and like optimize how it's going to work in Singapore and just make it happen. Yeah.
It's almost like a different, obviously the hustling part is important, but there's a different point there, which is just not being content, like continuously working on improving, which I think is very impressive when you speak to government officials there and you give them some compliment about what they have achieved. They come back to you with 5 problems they're currently working on solving, right? So never rest on your laurels. I was just watching this Netflix series with Lee Kuan Yew in his own words, right? And if you go and listen to all of his speeches and a lot of the stuff they've done on the cultural side here and in terms of how they built the government, there's this sense of, hey, you can never afford to rest on your laurels. You can never be content, because if you are, then you're heavily at risk of society going backwards.
Yeah. Right? What would be like, let's say, 3 main characteristics of a person, like to be potentially successful entrepreneur?
The great thing is you're not born with any of that. I think there are 3 things that matter. One, you need to be better at something than anyone else, right? So for example, you have figured out a great way to engage people on YouTube and throughout the media. And you're probably better at that than most other people. But you want to see a spike like that. You care much more about someone being incredible at something than being average on everything, right? So you don't really care if somebody has a few weaknesses as long as they have this clear spike. The second thing we look for is drive, which is commonly mistaken for being passion. Like passion is good. It's great to be passionate. But there are a lot of really passionate founders who never get anything done, right? So drive for us is ambition combined with the ability to execute. Are you able to move things forward, right? So for example, bring an example back to yourself again. You probably have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends that talk about things all the time. I should do this, I should do this, I should never do it. And, we probably have things like that ourselves that we haven't talked about. But you could have talked about this thing you're doing with YouTube and this step into what you're doing now, and you could never done anything about it. You might have been very passionate about it, but you executing it and showing that you're having success in moving this project forward shows an ambition and it shows ability to execute. right? So we're looking for proof on that. And the third thing is grit, which is often overlooked. You've done multiple things. I think all of us have tried different projects, and the more ambitious and hard things are, the harder it is to get off the ground, typically. And a lot of people give up on the way. And building a business is always like that, right? You will hit the wall multiple times on the way. A lot of really great people just give up before they have made it through. With Zalora, we struggle with getting brands on our website. We struggle with payment systems. We struggle with logistics networks. We had to build out all these capabilities we never thought we had to build out when we set out to do it. And when we started, there was 134 competitors in Southeast Asia doing the exact same thing. And a lot of them just didn't have the necessary grit to build out those capabilities to truly be successful and deliver a great product. And some people had the staying power to do so. And very often it's actually not the best founders who win, but there's the people who, to them, they won't give up no matter what. They're going to make progress. They're going to make this work. And the best example of that is currently the world's richest man, Elon Musk, right? When he built PayPal, they had fraud everywhere. They were running out of money during the dot-com crisis when Norway was investing in tech. They almost went bankrupt. SpaceX almost went bankrupt many times. Tesla almost went bankrupt many times. But he powers through, right? For him, failure is not an option. And I'm not saying that failing in the past is not something you can learn from. We all fail, right? I failed at things. But you gotta power through as far as you possibly can to make this work. So we look for those three things. And if you find those three things in one person, and that person builds a team of 2 to 3 other people like that, you have a great co-founder team, I think you reduce the likelihood of failing as a company with 89%. And it becomes more about how big does it get, right? You remove the accelerator to one risk.
Regarding the third one, I also fully agree on what you're saying, but some successful entrepreneurs say also there is a skill to identify if you need like this current project, you need to just give up. So it's like you're pushing, doesn't work. You need to give up. You can be passionate about it, and you can be blind. That's okay. That's maybe the market doesn't want it or something like that, or it's not the right time. And then okay, give up and do something else. But is this the thing, or you need to be persistent always?
In my opinion, you should really only give up once you're really have no opportunity to continue. There are so many great stories of founders who built in that valley of death and made it out of it, right? So we have a portfolio company now that struggled for 2 to 3 years, never really got going. I think the founder moved from like a 3-bedroom to 2-bedroom to 1-bedroom, and in the end they moved into a collective with a bunch of other people just to keep the company going and keep payroll. And then he did one iteration of his business, and 6 months later, he sold the company for 20 million, right? Most people would have given up. Him instead now, 2.5 years into his journey, is now, a multimillionaire and has a success on his plate. That when he wants to build something new now, it will be easier for him to hire the right people, get the right customer, get even more capital in to build his next business. Or he could have just given up without having accomplished anything, right?
Yeah.
And, Airbnb, right? They didn't get traction at all for 3 years or so. And they ended up starting to sell cereal, which is why one of the values is being a serial entrepreneur. And because that was the only way to make payroll or for them to continue to live. So they did this famous Obama McCain cereal that they sold. And now, I guess they peaked at $100 billion valuation during COVID, right? And, YouTube, I think, started as a dating app. Slack started as a gaming company. Like every successful founder in the world has hit that wall and felt that things were completely impossible, but they didn't give up. So I'm not saying that having given up in the past is not pride, and learning from those failures is fantastic. And I'm not necessarily saying that failure in the future is that bad either. But if you go in with the attitude that is even an option when you're trying to build something, then you're most likely going to fail. You got to push way further than you think you should. You got to keep iterating. And it's not about running one way in the same direction. No, it's trying new things, iterating. Sometimes it's a complete pivot. Sometimes it's small iterations. And just don't give up. It's like I was in the special forces in Norway. I was in the Norwegian Navy SEALs in the military before I went to Harvard. And our saying there was like, when you think you're so tired that you're close to dying, your body typically has 90% left to give. And it's true.
So you went to Harvard with Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin, right?
Yeah.
Like Eduardo lives in Singapore now.
Yeah. He lived there and built a great new company called Capital, which is one of the world's kind of top later stage VCs. They've been growing like crazy. A lot of people would just retire
Really. What do you think? Why Eduardo like becomes like super successful? What's the big features of him?
I think obviously you still need to execute on whatever you're doing, but I think you take away that initial risk and it becomes about how big it becomes, right? And obviously how big Facebook became. Obviously it's down to the founders, but it's also down to having, been working on the right idea at the right point of time, in the right way.
Yeah.
Right. So I think even if you have the best skill sets in the world, putting together the best possible team, there are some companies who are going to become really, really big, and there are some companies just going to become big.
So luck is actually plays the role.
Luck is when the right opportunity means a great preparation. Right. So I think it's you, as you prepare through life, there are two things that happens. Once you get exposed to more opportunities, and secondly, you can grab them when they come your way.
You know Mark Zuckerberg in person. Can you, let's say, tell like what kind of personality he is when he was at school?
He, in an extreme sense, shows all of the things that I'm talking about. Like on the Spike side, he's an incredibly great product builder. On the Drive side, it's insanely ambitious and driven, right? He just literally when he decides to do something, he just starts doing it, pushes it forward and executes. And he did that a bunch of times before he did Facebook. And on the Grit side, right, he's been through a lot with Facebook and his powered through, right? Like servers blowing up, growth they couldn't handle, a lot of push from Congress and countries and governments all across the globe. So he has all of these three skill sets, right? And I'm sure he has some tremendous weaknesses as well. And this is what I'm telling anyone I work with is you should really focus on your strengths and ensuring that those become better and better. And you're better at that than almost anyone in the world. And don't focus so much about becoming better at what you're really weak at. Because people typically don't get better at what they're really weak at, right? In McKinsey, it's quite interesting. They did this research on people who came into McKinsey as a junior associate or a business analyst, when they looked at them 25 years later when they were a senior partner. And throughout that, they've been receiving feedback every month on what they're great at and what they need to work on. And in general, the feedback tends to be the same 25 years later. Even if you worked on it your entire life, you just can't, in general, become the best in the world at what you're not that great at in your mid-20s or your 30s or later. But you can become incredible and the world's best at what you're really, really strong at. So identify your strength. And I think, Mark has done that incredibly well. And then they brought in a great team of people. Sheryl Sandberg, I don't know that well, but obviously was the CEO. David Fisher is at Snowboard now. He run the whole revenue generating arm. And, he just brought in these people who are really great at what he wasn't all that great at.
What's your most expensive purchase?
Material stuff is really not matter all that much to me, so I typically don't buy that much. I like to invest, so one of the most expensive things I purchase is shares of startups. I bought a bike, I can show it to you later. It's my road bike, and it's $5,000-$6,000. It's an expensive bike. But I mean, we don't have a car, we don't have a boat, we have a kayak. In general, I like investing in things that can generate innovation and upside and not buying things. I don't think that makes you necessarily happier.
And this place you own or you rent?
We're renting here.
If you have number of millions and you bank account while you're renting.
I fundamentally believe that you should invest your money into where you find the best returns. I'm not a property investor, so I know a lot about the best founders to back, the best technology companies to back. Don't know about the best properties to back. And on the other side, if you just look at it, the market overall, it's, obviously the returns on other asset classes have been much higher. Right? So if you think about, buying a house as an investment now, once you've decided that there's this particular place, and now I'm not talking about Singapore because we're going to live in Singapore for a long term. But if there's a specific place within Singapore that you absolutely want to live in for a very long period of time, then you should buy it because it's not an investment decision. It's an emotional, personal, life quality type decision.
That's how you approach it. Yeah.
That's how I approach it.
What's the lowest moment of your life?
I think the lowest moment was when my great grandmother died when I was 8-9 years old. Because it's super rare because basically you grow up, you have fun, you have a lot of friends, you run out in the forest, you have your family and so on, and then suddenly somebody just disappears, and you have to go to funeral. And I think that happened at the exact time intellectually where I could start thinking about these larger questions. So for a while there, in a very early age, I was seeking meaning to life, which is, I think as a kid, it could be a hard place to be. Luckily, through conversations with my parents and my grandparents and so on, I found that meaning, and it led to inspiration, which has led me to this grand belief, which might or might not be true. I'm not a child psychologist, but I think the most important thing parents can give to their children, or older people can give to younger people, is ability to be inspired. I don't think we can give them inspiration. They need to be inspired themselves. But I think you can expose them to situations in which they might get inspired. And if you're inspired early on in your life, or the earlier you get inspired by something, that becomes this inner fire, right? And it becomes this drive that to take on with you throughout the rest of your life. And I think as a parent, you can't control everything, right? You can't be there all the time to ensure people do well in school, or are nice to friends, or are not being bullied, or that they take the first job or their first relationship, the right one, or whatever. There's just no way you can do that. But you can expose your children to moments where they might get inspired. That's what my parents and grandparents did at that tough period of my life, which, and I've kind of seen the same with my son, and he got incredibly inspired when he was here. And that just creates this tremendous drive, I think, for the rest of your life, which is very hard to stop, right? And when you create that momentum, you can get hit right, left, and center by different things happening to you. Whether it's, your girlfriend breaks up with you, or you don't get into the university you want to get into, or you fail your driver's license test, or you get drunk and do some mistakes, or whatever it is that happens later in life. As long as you have that inspiration and that momentum, it will kind of just peter off, because you're strong at the core. There's a fire there.
If you want to hear more stories of inspirational, fun and impactful people, watch the next video. I promise you will enjoy it. No, seriously, you will.